Nama Bengaluru, a city with many monikers. The Garden City, the Silicon Valley of India, the pub capital of India. These are just some of the names this vibrant city is known by. But beneath all this, there is a secret. Bengaluru has a rich, ancient past. Founded in 1537 as a fort built by Garuda, Bengaluru is older than cities like Hyderabad, Chennai, and Mumbai. And the best part is, you and I can walk down these streets today. The echoes of the past are everywhere. Prepare for a journey back in time as we rediscover Bengaluru's forgotten history. Right in the middle of the modern city stand the remains of a fort. This is the Bangalore Fort, also known as the Bengaluru Kote. During the Third Anglo-Mysore War, it was captured by British forces. Today, only parts of the fort survives. What remains hint at a fort that once had strong walls and layered defenses. So what made Bengaluru Kote so strong? What stories are still hidden in its stones? Join me as we uncover the history of Bengaluru Kote. The origins of the Bengaluru Kote are unclear. Most scholars believe that a mud fort was first built in the 1600s by Chikkadeva Raja Wadiyar after he acquired the area from the Mughals for a reported sum of 3 lakh gold varahas. However, not all scholars agree. Some argue that both the fort surrounding the Pete and the Oval Fort were built at the same time by Kempegowda, and that Chikkadeva Raja Wadiyar merely expanded or modified the existing structure. The absence of detailed contemporary maps or illustrations makes it difficult to accurately reconstruct the fort's original layout. The Kote Jalakanteshwara Temple is considered to be one of the oldest surviving structures here. Dedicated to Lord Shiva as Jalakanteshwara, the temple is widely believed to date back to the time of Kempegowda, although no inscriptional evidence confirm it. The Kote Venkataramana Swamy Temple was built in 1700 by Chikkadeva Raja Wadiyar, a fact confirmed by inscriptional evidence. The temple's outer walls depict the marriage of Shiva and Parvati, and accompanying them are the attendants of the wedding, the Ashtadi Kalpas, the guardians of the directions, and Saptarishis, the 7 great sages. The temple is dedicated to Lord Vishnu. The Murti here closely resembles the deity of the Tirupati Balaji temple. Inside the Mahamandapa or central hall are 4 richly carved pillars. Each pillar is unique, featuring 4 Yali rider pairs, an uncommon design as most temples typically feature 1 or 2 or perhaps 3. As gunpowder transformed warfare, mud walls could no longer withstand artillery. In response, Hyder Ali built the Bangalore Fort in stone, with assistance from his commander Ibrahim Khan. The fort was later strengthened and modified under his son Tipu Sultan. This stone fort is the one that's well documented, appearing in British maps, sketches, and early photographs. The remains of the fort we see today are of this stone fort. Contemporary accounts describe the Bangalore Fort as an oval or near egg-shaped fortification that was roughly a mile in circumference and built of solid stone masonry. The ramparts were high with a strong parapet and reinforced by 26 circular bastions placed at regular intervals. There were also 5 cavaliers overlooking the entire enclosure. The fort was surrounded by a deep, wide ditch, often dry, and further protected by a fosbra, covered way, and glacis. Though some observers noted imperfections in these outer defenses. In the north was the Bengaluru Kote. The Kote was connected to the fort by a narrow causeway. The 2 principal gates were the Delhi Gate in the north and the Mysore Gate in the south. Of the 2, the Delhi Gate was the more elaborate one, while the Mysore Gate was comparatively simpler. So folks, here we are. This is what remains of the Bengaluru Fort, and more specifically the Delhi Gate. The Delhi Gate was once a large defensive complex with multiple courtyards and successive gateways. Today, only a portion survives. The heavy wooden doors are studded with iron spikes, a defensive feature designed to deter charging war elephants. Near the gate stands the small shrine to Ganesha, likely added after 1800. Above it is a carving of the Ganda Berunda, the 2-headed mythical bird and the emblem of the Wadiyar dynasty. The structure reflects a blend of Hindu and Islamic architecture. Floral scrollwork resembles motifs seen in Hindu temples, while geometric patterns point to Indo-Islamic influences. The gateways are arranged at right angles, a deliberate design intended to slow down invading forces. As attackers negotiated these sharp turns, they would have been exposed to the snipers positioned along the ramparts above. Openings in the walls, known as embrasures, allowed cannons to be fired. Steps along the outer wall leads up to the infamous dungeons. The plaque states that Sir David Baird and several others were imprisoned here in the 1780s during conflicts between the British and Tipu Sultan. Sir Baird was later released and went on to participate in the campaign that culminated in Tipu Sultan's death in 1799. Accounts from the 19th century describe these prison cells as extremely cramped, some reportedly barely large enough for a man to stand upright. If the British were to break down the fort, why was this part of the northern gate excluded? It is sometimes suggested that the Delhi gate was preserved by the British partly due to its association with Baird's imprisonment, allowing it to serve as a symbolic reminder of their eventual victory over Tipu Sultan. However, this interpretation remains speculative rather than confirmed fact. This is the Mysore gate in the south. Now the inner gate of the Mysore gate would have been here in this junction. The outer gate of the Mysore gate would have been here. And like other gates, the Kote and the fort, there's a temple nearby. Well, this is the Kote Muneshwara Temple, and I spoke to the priest inside, and she said that this temple would have been inside the fort back in the day. Under Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, the Bangalore Fort evolved into a major military and administrative center. Within its walls were arsenals and workshops for military production, including foundries for casting cannon and facilities for boring musket barrels. British-era maps records multiple large magazines within the fort. Today, just one survives. Built in the 18th century under Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, this armory was used to store artillery, guns, ammunition, and rockets. The Mysore army were known for their use of rockets in battle. These iron case rockets were used against the British East India Company during the wars of the 1780 and the 1790s. Their effectiveness left a strong impression on the British and later influenced the development of the Congreve rocket in 1805. Areas around KR Market and Taramandalpete are often associated with rocket production and experimentation under Tipu Sultan. However, the exact location of these facilities remain uncertain. Take a look at the board on the madrasa, it says Taramandal. So it is somewhere on this lane where they developed the rocket technology that was used by the Mysore army. The armory is partly underground, constructed within a sunken court. Its vaulted roof was designed to collapse in case of an explosion, helping to limit damage while also keeping the interior cool. An important feature for storing ammunitions. When the British captured the fort in 1791, they seized 120 cannons, many manufactured within the Mysore kingdom, along with others of French and English origin. The muskets used by the Mysore army were made locally, though imported weapons were also in use. Contemporary accounts describe some of these magazines as strongly built and nearly bomb-proof. So this armory would have actually been the southeastern edge of the fort. So just beyond this should be the fort wall. Right next to the Kote Venkataramana Swamy Temple stands the elegant Tipu Sultan Summer Palace. The palace complex once included a darbar hall, fountains, private residential quarters, and a parade ground. Today, only a portion of this large complex survives. Construction of the palace began in 1781 under Hyder and was completed in 1791 by his son Tipu Sultan. This Farsi inscription within the palace describes it as the abode of happiness envied by heaven. Contemporary accounts describe it as one of the most airy and elegant structures in this region. Built primarily of teak, the palace is a symmetrical two-storied structure set on a raised stone plinth. Its design is defined by open halls supported by rows of finely carved wooden pillars. Connected by scalloped arches. The interiors are richly decorated with floral motifs, painted in deep hues and highlighted with gold leaf. The ceiling paintings were created on strips of canvas and then stuck onto wooden panels. While the wall paintings were painted directly onto the walls. The pigments were made using natural ingredients like linseed oil, lead, aloe vera, and sap from the ficus tree. On the northern and southern side of the palace were small flower gardens, where European flowers grew alongside colorful flowers from India. The upper floor features a central hall flanked by rooms and open balconies, spaces traditionally believed to have hosted Tipu's darbar. At the center of the palace lies the darbar hall, where subjects are believed to have gathered to present petitions and air grievances before the ruler. A projecting balcony on the southern side is traditionally associated with Tipu Sultan's meetings with his military and administrative officers. The western balcony is believed to have been where Tipu's wife held her court. Back at the Kote Venkataramana Swamy Temple, local tradition believes that during the 1791 siege of Bengaluru, a cannonball is said to have struck the Garuda Stambh or Garuda pillar just outside the temple. It is believed that this incident saved the life of Tipu Sultan, who later showed reverence for the temple. The original pillar was chipped by the cannonball, but the pillar we see today is a recent replacement. In its heyday, the Bengaluru Kote was considered to be one of the strongest fortresses in the kingdom of Mysore. However, in the decades that followed, its reputation declined rapidly. After the British captured the Bengaluru Kote during the 1791 siege of Bengaluru, the fort was briefly returned to Tipu Sultan under the 1792 Treaty of Srirangapatnam. Historical accounts suggest that parts of the fort were later dismantled. Diwan Puranaya, who also served under Hyder Ali, Tipu Sultan and Krishna Rajendra Wodeyar III, had the fort repaired and rebuilt. However, after the defeat of Tipu Sultan in 1799, the British took control of the Bangalore Fort. They stationed troops here and used the fort to store a large arsenal of weapons. In 1807, the British established the Bangalore cantonment a few kilometers away. But the fort remained a separate and an important military outpost because of the arsenal. By the early 19th century, the fort had already begun to decline. Although some British troops and residents occupied it after 1811, by the 1820s and 30s, the structure had become increasingly dilapidated. Vegetation began to grow over the walls, the ditch filled with water, and the repairs were limited. The East India Company avoided major repairs, carrying out only what was necessary to keep the fort usable and the arsenal secure. In 1831, the British took direct control of the Mysore kingdom, citing misrule under the Mysore Wodeyars. This further reduced the importance of the fort, as administrative and military activity increasingly shifted to the cantonment. By the mid-19th century, the palace complex was repurposed for administrative use, housing offices for revenue, military, and civil departments. Expanding administrative needs led to the construction of new administrative buildings such as the Attara Kacheri, what is today the High Court of Karnataka. Over time, parts of the original palace complex was altered or demolished, leaving behind only the section that survives today. In 1881, during the rendition, when control of Mysore was returned to the Wodeyar dynasty, there were proposals to dismantle sections of the walls for reuse in other projects. This move faced objections from Diwan C.V. Rangacharlu. A few years later, in 1888, the British moved the arsenal out of the fort. The fort was then handed back to the Mysore administration in exchange for control of the residency grounds, now known as Raj Bhavan. This marked the end of the fort's role as a military stronghold. From 1889 onwards, the growing city began to steadily consume the fort. Sections of the walls were dismantled, ditches were filled in, and gateways were broken to make way for roads and markets. Stones from the fort were often reused for construction or repurposed elsewhere. We have documents from the Karnataka State Archives that reveal when and which parts of the fort were demolished or modified. In 1895, 5,500 rupees was sanctioned for converting the lower arsenal into a Sanskrit college. In 1911, a portion of the fort wall was taken down to extend the playground of the Bangalore Fort High School. On 8 December 1900, Victoria Hospital was inaugurated outside the fort walls. On 31st January 1913, the Minto Eye Hospital was inaugurated nearby. The Mysore government later proposed building a maternity hospital within the fort area. The fort church was located between the two hospitals. The fort church was the first Protestant church in Bangalore. Early records refer to it as Drummer's Chapel. It was constructed by the British soldiers in 1807. Outside the church was a cemetery where soldiers who died during the siege of Bangalore were buried. The records of these officers were later transferred to the cenotaph. Sadly, the cenotaph was vandalized on the 28th of October 1964 and completely destroyed. The fort church was demolished in 1932 to make way for the construction of the Vani Vilas Women and Children Hospital. The government of Mysore allotted land in Charmarajpet for the construction of a new church, the St. Luke's Church. By the end of the 19th century, the fort had lost most of its structure, its military relevance, and its former glory. Today, only fragments remain. In the next episode, our season finale, we will relive the 1791 siege of Bangalore, a bloody battle that unfolded in the streets of the Pete and the fort.